Hi everyone, this is week 12, 2019 Chronological Bible reading. Today we are reading together from 1 Samuel 25 through 31 and 2 Samuel 1, first chapter through first chapter, and several Psalms. First Samuel, finally Samuel died. Now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him at his home in Ramah. Then David moved down into the desert of Mount. No more Samuel. Samuel died. In chapter 25, we have three wives of David, their story. From first part, chapter 2, through almost the end of the chapter, talking about Abigail. When we read the story of Nabal and Abigail, the Nabal is very similar to the foolish rich man in the parable of Jesus Christ told us. Luke chapter 12 from Luke chapter 12 from verse 16, and he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. And when Jesus said this, this emphasized prosperity is a blessing, not our own works result. The ground produced. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how we deal with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich toward God." So the Nabal, he did not give anything to David. But when we read chapter 25, verse 36 of 1 Samuel, when Abigail went to Nabal, he was in the house holding a banquet like that of a king. He was in high spirits and very drunk, so she told him nothing until daybreak. Then in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him all these things, and his heart failed him, and he became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. Then, as Jesus mentioned it, when God picked up Nabal's soul, everything he stole, and his wife, it became someone's wife, David's wife. So Nabal is the good example of someone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich toward God. So when we have, we must share, because without this area, without David's protection, Amalekites, they easily get rid of all of they have. So when we read 43, David had also married Ahinoam of Jezreel. Jezreel is actually north, near to the Manasseh, north of Manasseh. So that means David has his connection in Israel. And they both were his wives. That means Abigail and Ahinoam became David's wives. Then 44, but Saul had given his daughter Michal, David's wife, to Paldiel, son of Laish, who was from Galim. So actually Galim is near north of Jerusalem, but actually David, Michal was David's wife, and what Michal and Samuel, they cannot live together when Michal helped David to leave his house. From when we read 1 Samuel chapter 19, after that they cannot live in the same house, but still Michal was David's wife. And then David, chapter 25, David stayed at the desert of Ziph. But the Ziphites went to Saul at Gibeah and said, "Is not David holding on the hill of Hakilah, which faces Jeshimon?" So Saul went down to catch David with 3,000 men, but all of them were fall asleep. Verse 5, then David set out and went to the place where Saul had camped. He saw where Saul and Abner, son of Ner, the commander of the army, had lain down. Saul was lying inside the camp with the army encamped around him. So David and Abishai went there, and they took the spear and water jar, because David never ever tried to kill Saul, because Saul was the anointed king. And finally, in the safe place, David waked up Abner and Saul, and they talked together. And verse 19, David said, "Now let my lord the king listen to his servant's words. If the Lord has incited you against me, then may he accept an offering. If, however, men have done it, may they be cursed before the Lord. They have now driven me from my share in the Lord's inheritance and have said, 'Go serve other gods.'" So David always think about, I cannot stay in the inheritance of Lord had given them. But Saul completely knew he was wrong. Verse 21 said, "Then Saul said, 'I have sinned. Come back, David, my son. Because you considered my life precious today, I will not try to harm you again. Surely I have acted like a fool and have erred greatly.'" And 25, "Then Saul said to David, 'May you be blessed, my son David. You will do great things and surely triumph.' And so David went on his way, and Saul returned home." So Saul returned to Gibeah. David still stay here. But finally, chapter 27, "But David thought to himself, 'One of these days I will be destroyed by the hand of Saul. The best thing I can do is to escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will give up searching for me anywhere in Israel, and I will slip out of his hand.'" So David, this time, second time, went to Achish, king of Philistines in Gath. But this time, he is not by himself. He is not by himself. When we read chapter 21, at the time David was almost by himself. Chapter 21, from verse 10 to 15, he was in the mouth of a lion, for example. And I saw a video clip from maybe the Amazon area. Some frog ate the poison food, and when a snake tried to swallow that frog, but he finally spit it out, and frog was completely okay, because he already get the poison, and the serpent, the snake, knew about that. So when David intended to try to be like insane, at the time people know the insanity is kind of a contagious disease. They even try try to kill him, so they just let him go. But this time, again, David came into the same place, maybe the same king, Achish. But this time David was with his 600 men. So Achish was thinking, David will be my people, my subjects. So Achish welcomed him. So when we read 2 and 3, so David and the 600 men with him left and went over to Achish, son of Maok, king of Gath. David and his men settled in Gath with Achish. Each man had his family with him, and David had his 2 wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail of Carmel, the widow of Nabal. And David asked to Achish, verse 5, then David said to Achish, if I have found favor in your eyes, let a place be assigned to me in one of the country towns, that I may live there. Why should your servant live in the royal city with you? So this is a Gath, and this is a Ziklag. So on that day, Achish gave him Ziklag, and it was belonged to the kings of Judah ever since. So David lived in Philistine territory a year and 4 months. And David keep on raided this area for living. Get the food, get the livestock, and get the things, and killed everyone. Nobody could be saved. And he said to Achish, he laid it here. That's why he cannot save anyone. That's why when we read verse 12, Achish trusted David and said to himself, he has become so odious to his people, the Israelites, that he will be my servant forever. So Achish, he is maybe a good man, but he's not wise. And chapter 28, in those days the Philistines gathered their forces to fight against Israel. Achish said to David, you must understand that you and your men will accompany me in the army. So the Philistines, they get together and going up to there, and they try to invade Israel from that area. And David said, then you will see for yourself what your servant can do. Achish replied, very well, I'll make you my bodyguard for life. And this situation, in this situation, Saul was in the lowest point of his spiritual life. Verse 3, now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had mourned for him, and buried him in his own town of Ramah. Saul had expelled the mediums and spiritists from the land. Kind of religious purification, what Saul did. That's good. But verse 4, the Philistines assembled and came and set up camp at Sunem, while Saul gathered all the Israelites and set up camp at Gilboa. So this is mountain Gilboa, and Israelites, Philistine already came into Sunem here. And when Saul saw the Philistine army, he was afraid. Terror filled his heart. This is what the situation when a man did not trust in the Lord. So he inquired of the Lord, But the Lord did not answer him by dreams or Urim or prophets. So if God did not answer, he must find out what he has wrong. So he must repent. He must repent. But Saul then said to his attendants, "Find me a woman who is a medium, so I may go and inquire of her." And they said, "There is one in Endor," they said. So this is Mount Gilboa and Jezreel and Sunem, and this is Endor. This is even a little bit northeast part of Sunem. That's why in two regions, Saul disguised himself. First, he tried to hide himself. He is not like Saul, and he must protect himself from the Philistine army. So Saul disguised himself, putting on other clothes, and at night he and two men went to the woman. "Consult the spirit for me," he said, "and bring up for me the one I name." So when we read these things, this is what I think. God never allows about this like spiritual things. He never allows that kind of mediums or spiritists. But God uses this time. And even the one who came up from the underground, he may be not a Samuel's soul. But what he said is God's words. So he said, 16, Samuel said, "Why do you concern me? Now that the Lord has turned away from you and become your enemy. The Lord has done what he predicted through me. The Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David. Because you did not obey the Lord or carry out his fierce wrath against the Amalekites, the Lord has done this to you today." So one of the single sin Saul did is his disobedience to destroy totally the Amalekites. When we read chapter 15. Yeah, chapter 15. When we read verse 11, verse 10, "Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel, I am grieved that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions." Samuel was troubled, and he cried out to the Lord all the night. So again, chapter 28, verse 19, "The Lord will hand over both Israel and you to the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will also hand over the army of Israel to the Philistines." This is so sad story. But the lady served food for Saul and his two people. That is a good story. In chapter 29, the Philistines gathered all their forces at Aphek, and Israel camped by the spring in Jezreel. So this is Aphek and Jezreel. So they moved a little bit there. As the Philistines rulers marched with their units of hundreds and thousands, David and his men were marching at the rear with Achish. The commanders of the Philistines asked, "What about these Hebrews?" Achish replied, "Is this not David, who was an officer of Saul, king of Israel? He has already been with me for over a year, and from the day he left Saul until now, I have found no fault in him." So, if the other commanders of the Philistines did not realize David was there, and they asked to Achish to return to Ziklag, David will have two problems. One is he must fight against his own people, and he will lose all their family members, the 600 people's family members, by the Amalekites. So, verse 11, so David and his men got up early in the morning to go back to the land of the Philistines, and Philistines went up to Jezreel. So David came back to Ziklag, and Philistines attacked the Israelites in Jezreel. And chapter 30, David and his men reached Ziklag on the third day. That means when they going there, they spent 3 days. When they return, they spent 3 days. So at least they spent 7 days. Now the Amalekites had raided the Negev and Ziklag. They had attacked Ziklag and buried it, and had taken captive the women and all who were in it, both young and old. They killed none of them, but carried them off as they went on their way. So the Amalekites, they raided here, and from Ziklag they captured all the people as captives, because they wanted to sell them as slaves. And they captured all the livestock, and they returned to their place. So when David and his men came to Ziklag, they found it destroyed by fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. So David and his men wept loud until they had no strength left to weep. David's two wives had been captured, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking to stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters. But David found strength in the Lord his God. This is what exactly different situation between Saul and David. When it was very stressed, Saul tried to find his own way, but David always found God's way. So they finally pursued the Amalekites. And the verse 9, David and the 600 men with him came to the Besor ravine, where some stayed behind, for 200 men were too exhausted to cross the ravine, but David and 400 men continued the pursuit. So this is Besor. So when they went up there 3 days, maybe stay 1 day and came back 3 days, and they tried to pursue, and among 600, 400 still could do, but 200 were too much exhausted. And he made a boy of Egypt. So they found the Amalekites camp. When verse 16, he led David down, and there they were scattered over the countryside, eating, drinking, and rebelling because of a great amount of plunder they had taken from the land of Philistines and from Judah. David fought them from dusk until evening of the next day, and none of them got away, except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. And David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing. What a blessing. Young or old, boy or girl, plunder or anything else they had taken, David brought everything back. He took all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of the other livestock, saying, "This is David's plunder." And when they returned there, they met 200 their own people there, and some of David's 400 party, some of them evil men, they just returned to the 200 person, their own family members, and did not share the plunders. But what David said is verse 24, from verse 23, David replied, "No, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and handed over to us the force that came against us. Who will listen to you? Who will listen to what you say? The share of the men who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike." So, when the Philistine army had battling with the Israelites, the main part here, David won. David got back everything he had, and plus a lot of plunders. So that's why when he returned to Ziklag, he sent his plunders whole area of the tribe of Judah. And chapter 31 is describing the battle there and how Saul and his 3 sons were dead there. Now the Philistines fought against Israel. The Israelites fled before them, and many fell slain on Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines pressed hard after Saul and his sons. They killed his sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. And Saul was severely injured by the arrow. He almost died. So he asked his armor bearer to kill himself, to kill him. But he even not that much there to kill the anointed king. So Saul, last part, he killed himself. And verse 7, when Israelites along the valley and those across the Jordan saw that the Israelite army had fled and that Saul and his sons had died, they abandoned their towns and fled, and the Philistines came and occupied them. The next day, when Philistines came to strip the dead, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped off his armor, and they sent a message throughout the land of the Philistines to proclaim the news in the temple of their idols and among their people. They put his armor in the temple of the Ashtoreth and faced his body to the wall of Bashan. So this is Bashan. But when we read First Chronicles, here are some more information there. Let me read First Chronicles chapter 10 from verse 7. When all the Israelites in the valley saw that the army had fled and that Saul and his sons had died, they abandoned their towns and fled, and the Philistines came and occupied them. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the dead, they found Saul and his sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They stripped him and took his head and his armor and sent a message throughout the land of the Philistines to proclaim the news among their idols and their people. They put his armor in the temple of their gods and hung up his head in the temple of Dagon when all the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead. So, as I understand, he sent Saul's armor and his head to their own land, Philistines' land. So they put the Saul's armor, their God's house, and they put his head there. And when they sent the news hole there, maybe his head is circulated in their land. So again, this is, so when we compare 1 Samuel chapter 31 and Chronicles chapter 10, Chronicles chapter 10 is more precise, little precise. And verse 11 of Samuel chapter 31, when the people of Jabesh Gilead heard of what the Philistines had done to Saul, all their valiant men journeyed through the night to Bashan. They took down the bodies of Saul and his sons from the wall of Bashan and went to Jabesh, where they burned them. Then they took their bones and buried them under a tamarisk tree at Jabesh, and they fasted 7 days. Let me read again Chronicles chapter 10 from verse 11. When all the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard of everything the Philistines had done to Saul, all their valiant men went and took the bodies of Saul and his sons and brought them to Jabesh. Then they buried their bones under the great tree in Jabesh, and they fasted 7 days. And what added in First Chronicles 2 verses 10, chapter 10 verse 13 and 14, Saul died because he was unfaithful to the Lord. He did not keep the word of the Lord and even consulted a medium for guidance. And he did not inquire of the Lord. So the Lord put him to death and turned the kingdom over to David, son of Jesse. So Saul was not faithful to the Lord. He did not keep the word of the Lord. That means he did not completely destroy the Amalekites, chapter 15, 1 Samuel. And even consulted a medium for guidance and did not inquire to the Lord. So when these 4 things, we must remember why Saul was totally failed. So first one is unfaithful. To the Lord. And second one is he did not keep the word. Did not keep the word. Did not keep the word of the Lord. Third one is he consulted a medium. This is idolatry. This is obedience. This is unfaith. And finally, did not inquire of the Lord. So, we must be faithful. We must keep the word of the Lord. We must avoid the idolatry. And we must do not give up to pray to our Lord. And 2 Samuel, actually when Israelites who were in Egypt about BC 3rd century, they tried to translate Hebrew Bible into Greek because their own people cannot understand Hebrew Bible. So they, when they translate from Hebrew to Greek, we call it a Septuagint. At that time, they divide like Samuel into 2 parts, Kings into 2 parts, the Chronicles into 2 parts. But good thing is they never try to make 2 parts like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. So in the Hebrew Bible, there is no 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel kind of distinction. And the first chapter of 2 Samuel, David finally in Ziklag, he heard the news Saul and his 3 sons were dead by a man who was in Israel, but he was Amalekite, and he may at the scene Saul asked to his armor bearer kill himself, and he may saw everything there. So he took his crown, Saul's crown, and what he said is, verse 10, so I stood over him and killed him, because I knew that after he had fallen, he could not survive. And I took the crown that was on his head and the band on his arm, and have brought them here to my Lord. Because he killed Saul. This is good warranty for David, because David completely showed his wisdom and his innocence to the people. He never agreed or never attacked to harm or to kill the anointed king. So the Amalekite was dead. So when we read was killed, when we read verse 11, then David and all the men with him took hold of their clothes and tore them. They mourned and wept and fasted till evening for Saul and his son Jonathan, and for the army of the Lord and the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. So from last part of 1 Samuel, and when we read chapter until 4, the main people like Saul and his 3 sons, and Abner and Ishbosheth, all they are dead. And all their death, David did nothing. So there is a good warranty for David to be a king of the whole Israel people. So only the Mephibosheth was survived. And from verse 17, David took up his lament concerning Saul and his son Jonathan, and ordered that the men of Judah be taught this lament for the vow, of the vow. It is written in the book of Joshua. That means I never agreed to kill Saul and his son Jonathan. So verse 23, it says, Saul and Jonathan, in life they were loved and gracious, and in death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. And 25, how the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain in your height. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You are very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. How the mighty has fallen, the weapons of war have perished. And then David inquired, he may go into the territory of Judah. And God said yes. And he went to Hebron with his whole the people. Then verse 4, then the men of Judah came to Hebron, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. When David was told that it was the men of Jabesh Gilead who had buried Saul. So first David was anointed by Samuel in chapter 16, verse 13. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day when the Spirit of the Lord came upon David in power, Samuel then went to Ramah. So this is the second time of anointing. This time, so first time when Samuel anointed him, is kind of starting point. He was he was a king of Israel, but actually at that time Saul was king. So this kind of it makes him like a visa. And verse 8, 2 Samuel chapter 2. Meanwhile, Abner, son of Ner, the command of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. So, Saul had 4 sons. So one son was not in the battle, so he survived. So when we read First Chronicles chapter 8 verse 33 and chapter 9 verse 39 is the same. This is kind of genealogy. So genealogy is always not easy, but we must read like this. Ner and Kishi and Saul and Jonathan, Abinadab, the Malchishua and Abinadab and Eshbal. So, Kishi's brother is Abner. So Abner is Saul's uncle, but he was Saul's commander-in-chief. So when Abner made Eshbal is a man of the Lord. Baal means man, and Ish is man. When Abner made Eshbal as a king of Israel, so this is their relationship in genealogy. Abner. It's always confusing for me. So let me read again chapter 2, verse 8. Meanwhile, Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth. The Ishbosheth means a man of shame, son of Saul, and brought him over Mahanaim. It's Mahanaim. Yeah. And he made him king of Gilead, Ashuri and Jezreel, and also over the Ephraim and Benjamin and all Israel. So actually, Judea and whole Israel. So it's divided two countries. And verse 10, Ishbosheth, son of Saul, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he reigned 2 years. The house of Judah, however, followed David. So this is Judah, and this is Israel. So all Israel. And verse 11, the length of time David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. And when we read chapter 2, 2 Samuel, there are horrible story of battle, war. So war is not beautiful. This is not a romantic. This is not another. War is always horrible. At Gibeon, when they gathered together, verse 12 and 13, Abner, son of Ner, gathered with the men of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, left Mahanaim and went to Gibeon. Joab, son of Zeruiah, and David's men went out and met them at the pool of Gibeon. One group sat down on one side of the pool and one group on the other side at the Gibeon. And they picked up 12 young men from each side and let them fight together. So when we read verse 16, then each man grabbed his opponent by the head and thrust his dagger into his opponent's side, and they fell down together. So that place in Gibeon was called Helkath Hazrim. That means the field of daggers or field of hostilities. And finally, and Abner was defeating, and he's running back, and Asahel was pursuing him. So, verse 22, again, Abner warned Asahel, "Stop chasing me. Why should I strike you down? How could I look your brother Joab in the face?" But Asahel refused to give up the pursuit. So Abner thrust the butt of his spear into Asahel's stomach, and the spear came out through his back. He fell there and died on the spot. And every man stood when he came to the place where Asahel had fallen and died. This is, I understand, both of them are running so fast, and Abner asked to stop, but Asahel did not give up. So if this is his spear, this is front and this is butt, So when he just like this, and Asar, because he was so fastly running, it is came back to his back. It's a sad story. So verse 27, Joab and Abner agreed to stop there. Joab answered, "As surely as God lives, if we had not spoken, the men would have continued the pursuit of their brothers until morning." So there are many options of this verse. So in footnote, or spoken this morning, the men would not have taken up the pursuit of their brothers, or spoken, the men would have given up the pursuit of their brothers by morning. So this is sometimes when we understand the Hebrew original text, it's not easy to interpret, translate into our own language. So they buried, when we did 32, they took Asahel and buried him in his father's tomb at Bethlehem. Then Joab and his men marched all night and arrived at Hebron by daybreak. So this is Bethlehem. The Jebus is Jerusalem, and about 5 miles south is Bethlehem. So Bethlehem is David's hometown. So and Joab himself buried his brother Asahel in Bethlehem, the family tomb. And verse 3, chapter 3, verse 3, chapter 3, verse 1, the war between the house of Saul and the house of David lasted a long time. David grew stronger and stronger, while the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. And here are David's sons. The sons were born to David in Hebron. First son was Amnon. From Ahinoam. Second son is Kiliab. From Abigail. The oldest son was Absalom. From Talmai, son of Maacah, daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. Maacah. Geshur, we never read they are fighting with against the Israelites, so maybe a very good relationship. So she was princess from king of Geshur. So Maacah was David's wife, and her son is Absalom. And fourthly is Adonijah. Son of Haggith. And fifth is Shephatiah, and sixth is Israel. So 5 and 6. All these 6 sons was born in Hebron when he was staying there 7 years and 6 months. These 3 sons are very important for the when we read together, when we read further. And this is a story of how Abner finally gave the whole Israelite to David, and he killed. Verse 7, now Saul had a concubine named Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, and Ishbosheth said to Abner, why did you sleep with my father's concubine? And Abner was very angry because of what Ishbosheth said. And he answered, am I a dog's head upon Judah's side? This very day I am loyal to the house of your father Saul, and to his family and friends. I hadn't handed you over to David, yet now you accuse me of an offense involving this woman. So Abner was nothing good. If he knew God's will, he must obey that. He did not make Ishbosheth as king of Israel at Mahanaim. And now he said, may God deal with Abner, be it ever so surely, if I do not do for David what the Lord promised him on oath, and transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul and establish David's throne over the Israel and Judah from Dan to Beersheba. Dan to Beersheba. Ishbosheth did not dare to say another word to Abner because he was afraid of him. Then Abner sent messengers on his behalf to say to David, whose land is it? This is very like confusing, disguised question. Whose land is it? It's God's land, but it was originally given to Saul, but God changed his mind and he gave it to David. So at that point, Saul and Abner and Ishbosheth almost all they have to agree about that, but Abner was disagree about that, and he just kept Ishbosheth and made him king, and he thought this one was mine. And he said, make an agreement with me, and I will help you bring all Israel over to you. But at this time, David agreed about that suggestion, but he asked next time bring the Michal. Michal was near the Anatoth, north of Jerusalem. Because Michal was the Saul's daughter, princess, and she was David's original husband. So verse 15, so Ishbosheth gave orders and had her taken away from her husband, Paldiel, son of Reshi. Her husband, however, went with her, weeping behind her all the way to Bahurim. Then Abner said to him, "Go back home." So he went back. So from the Galim to Bahurim, he followed her with weeping, but he went back there. So sad story. And verse 17, Abner conferred with the elders of Israel and said, "For some time you have wanted to make David your king. Now do it. For the Lord promised David, by my servant David I will rescue my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and from the hand of all their enemies." So here we clearly know that the most single important duty of a king is protect of his own people from the enemies. And Abner also spoke to the Benjamites in person. Then he went to Hebron to tell David everything that Israel and the whole house of Benjamin wanted to do. And Abner, who had 20 men with men, came to David in Hebron. David prepared a feast for him and his men. And Abner said to David, "Let me go at once and assemble all Israel for my lord the king, so that they may make a compact with you, and that you may rule over all that your heart desires." So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. So Abner could not complete this job here because Joab pursued him and killed him. Even Joab told to David, verse 24, so Joab went to the king and said, "What have you done? Look, Abner came to you. Why did you let him go? Now he is gone. You know Abner, son of Ner. He came to deceive you and observe your movements and find out everything you are doing." So Joab and his brother Abishai, when we read verse 30, Joab and his brother Abishai murdered Abner because he had killed their brother Asahel in the battle of Gibeon. And David was in danger to lose the heart of Israelites. So he wanted to make sure he never intended anything to kill Abner. So he had a great burial and mourning for Abner. And finally, verse 36, all the people took note and were pleased. Indeed, everything the king did pleased them. So on that day, all the people and all Israel knew that the king had no part in the murder of Abner, son of Ner. So David at this point was very wise and pure. The wisdom and purity. Let me read chapter 16 of chapter 10 of Matthew 10, when Jesus sent his disciples go out. He said, "I am sending you out like sheep among wolves." We are sheep in wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. So David was shriveled with as snakes and as innocent as doves. That's why he could be the king of whole Israelite. And he said, again, chapter 3, verse 38, then the king said to his men, do you not realize that a prince and a great man has fallen in Israel this day? He's talking about Abner. And today, though I am the anointed king, I am weak. And these sons of Zeruiah are too strong for me. May the Lord repay the evildoer according to his evil deeds. So the relationship between Zeruiah's 3 sons and David, I understand like this. So Jesse has 7, 8 sons. One of almost the last son is David, and sister is Zeruiah. And Zeruiah's 3 sons are Joab and Abishai and Asahel. So this is kind of David's nephews. And chapter 4 is how Ishbosheth was killed. He was killed by the brothers named Baana and Rekab. And verse 4, we have information about Jonathan's son. Jonathan, son of Saul, had a son who was lame in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Israel. His nurse picked him up and fled, but as she hurried to leave, he fell and became crippled. His name was Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth means the one who take away the shame. So the Baana and Rekab killed Ishbosheth when he was sleeping in daytime and nap time, and they brought his head to King David, but King David killed those 2 people because if he give them prize, it is David happy about that. David wanted the Ishbosheth was killed, so David is never make them kind of mistakes. He was innocent and he was so wise. And now let me read some Psalms, chapter 17. Psalm 17. O Lord, verse 14, O Lord, by your hand save me from such men, from men of this world, whose reward is in this life. You still the hunger of those you cherish. Their sons have plenty, and they store up wealth in their children. And Psalm 35, David prayed, "Content, O Lord, with those who content with me. Fight against those who fight against me." And Psalm 54, when the Ziphites had gone to Saul and said, "Is not David hiding among us?" David prayed, "Strangers are attacking me. Ruthless men seek my life, men without regard for God." So we must always think about God is in front of us. And 63, my soul, verse 5, from verse 5, "My soul will be satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips my mouth will praise you. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night." And Psalm 18, David sang to the Lord the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, "You made my enemies," from verse 40, "You made my enemies turn their backs in flight, and I destroyed my host. They cried for help, but there was no one to save them. To the Lord, but he did not answer." So when did not answer, Saul could not do anything. And Psalm 121, so we are a little bit confusing to exactly pinpoint what Psalm was written when, but still we may apply. I lift up my, Psalm 121, "I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my people come from? Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot sleep. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep." And 123, "As the eyes of slaves look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a maid look to the hand of their mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us his mercy." And 124, verse 6, "Praise be to the Lord, who has not let us be torn by their teeth." And 128, "Blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in his ways. He will eat the fruit of his labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours." So God's blessing, God's prosperity always given first through our own labor. So your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house, Your sons will be like olive shoots around your table. Thus in the man blessed who fears the Lord, may the Lord bless you from Zion all the days of your life. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem, and may you live to see your children's children. Peace be upon Israel. And verse 129, they had greatly oppressed me from my youth. Let Israel say, they have greatly oppressed me from my youth, but they have not gained the victory over me. Plowmen had plowed my back and made their furrows long. And 130, verse 3, if you, O Lord, kept a record of sins, O Lord, who could stand? But with you there is a forgiveness, therefore you are feared. I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in his word I put my hope. My soul waits for the Lord more than watchmen wait for the morning, more than watchmen wait for the morning. O Israel, put your hope in the Lord, for with the Lord is unfailing love, and with him in full redemption. So these two things, we always eager to get. We always eager to get these two things. One is unfailing love, and full redemption. Unfailing love is actually, this is hesed, and full redemption is pada. Hesed and pada. The Hesed is God's love in covenant, and full redemption pada is actually done, both of them done in Jesus Christ, our Lord. And four more Psalms. Psalm 6. O Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger, or discipline me in your wrath. Be merciful to me, Lord, for I am faint. O Lord, hear me, for my bones are in agony. My soul is in anguish. How long, O Lord, how long? Turn, O Lord, and deliver me, save me, because of your unfailing love. Again, the Hesed. And Psalm 8 is very, very the famous psalm. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. From the lips of children and infants you have ordained praise because of your enemies, to silence the foe and the avenger. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor. You made him ruler over the works of your hands. You put everything under his feet, all flocks and herds, and the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea, all that swim that passeth over the seas. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. This is a praise of how God's creation as a human being is beautiful, but also the author of Hebrews quoted these words as describe how Jesus did his job as a redeemer of our for our sins. From verse 5 to let me read Hebrews chapter 2 verse 5. It is not the angel that he had subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking, but there is a place where someone has testified, what is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him. You made him a little lower than angels. You crowned him with glory and honor, and put everything under his feet. In putting everything under him, God left nothing that is not subject to him. Yet at present we do not see everything subject to him, but we see Jesus. He applies these words to Jesus. When we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor, because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone, in bringing many sons to glory. It was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the author of their salvation perfect through suffering. So this is a very good example how Bible verses, how the Bible verses could apply the first meaning and second meaning. And chapter 9, Psalm 9, verse 9, the Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name will trust in you, for you, O Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. And chapter 10, verse 9, he lies in wait like a lion in cover. He lies in wait to catch the helpless. He catches the helpless and drags them off in his nest. And from verse 17, you hear, O Lord, the desire of the afflicted. You encourage them and you listen to their cry, defending the fatherless and the oppressed, in order that man who is of the earth may terrify no more. So when we read today's Bible, we must thought of that when we are in the side of God, our God, God is with us. So let us keep on trust Him and obey Him and find out His will and change our own minds and lean on Him and near to God, and God is with us. Thank you very much. Let us keep on reading and I'll meet you next time. Thank you. Bye.